We have a very interesting topic today. People have been asking this, that what's the difference between working at different size companies and which one should people pick? I think generally people have this question. So we will
Right.
delve a little deeper into this. But before we get into the individual aspect, like where should I go and work? I would love to ask first of all your point of view on what is the different tech challenges that different companies are solving. So, for example, some stage startup with a small 15, 20 people team, maybe seed or maybe Series A raised. What kind
Right.
of problems is that company solving? And if there's an
Right.
established MNC, millions of people, thousands of employees, what are the problems that MNC is solving? What are the differences in tech in these two
Right.
places?
Your question, Arnav, that when startups do vary a lot, like often the definition of a startup also get very, very, different. For example, Zomato as a company, like in people's psyche, it might also still be a startup. But if we see from all the angles, it's a fairly large company. So Zomato is more similar to, maybe a large company like say Amazon than a young startup now, right? That being said, I will maybe first define that when I say startup, what I mean. I would say, let's say, a company which is early in their journey, let's say, engineering team of, say, less than 40 people or so, 40 engineering team of less than 40, 50 people, and actually say, who are building, not been building product for too long. Let's say, they started building the product, they are in the journey less than, say, 4 years, right?
Right.
If we define these two criteria to define a startup, the biggest difference is that see, in a large company, what would happen? Let's say let me try to explain it with an example. Let's say someone joins a company like Google, and let's say you are working in the search team. Now this search feature is probably being built from 1998 when Google started, right? There are
Right.
probably maybe 4,000-5,000 or maybe even more people contributing within Google to this feature, right? And it's not that it's gonna be that you will be solving a very fundamental problem now, which is related to, let's say, search itself. But however, that doesn't mean that you will not have interesting things to do. There will be very different kind of challenges which might be related to massive scale. So for example, if you are able to improve the search result time even by 10 milliseconds, the impact of that is so high. Actually, I think there was some research or some study on that, how much electricity would it save if all the Google search results are, speed is improved by 10 seconds, and that's just the electricity saving of
Yeah.
that might be in many $1 million, right? So in a large company, there is more probability that either you will be solving problems related to very high scale. Like in one way, one might say that, it's not really very interesting. I'm doing is that, something that takes 110 milliseconds. Otherwise, I'll make it work at 100 milliseconds. Might be very interesting for some because it will be at a scale of billions of users, or it might not be very exciting for some, right? On the other hand, imagine someone who would have joined Google in 1998 or 2000 or 2002, right?
Right.
Or let's say I'm sure that there must be some company with just 10 people, which will be Google-like company after 20 years, right? So what would be the work someone doing at that point in time? The work will be very different. Then at that point in time, the work would be that what is going to be the search algorithm, which might give better search results, right? How can we include more sources of data? So generally, see, simple thing is that the quality of work at Google from 1998 to say 2004 versus the quality of work from 2004 to 2010, and then the kind of work from 2010 to 20, these three are gonna be very, very different. Similarly, even if you join a company now, how you will be working now, let's say, let me take example of InterviewBit and Scalar Academy itself. How we would be working in 2015 when we started out versus how we would be working now will be very different, right? So, that is what it differentiates. If you enjoy, basically building more tools, or let's say building out software from scratch, then most likely, again, I wouldn't say that at large company you can never get that opportunity, but the probability of finding that opportunity is much larger in a smaller startup. Again, most likely you might not see challenges of extremely high scale at very young startup, because right now they're in the process of building something. They will see scale maybe few years down the line once these features go popular, right? Again, if I take example of Zomato, probably back in 2015 or let's say back in 2012, they will not have that high scalability challenge. They were figuring out that what features user want to use, what kind of application people will love, right? Today, probably they will be facing a lot of scalability challenges as well. So yeah, generally the chances that you will easily find high scale challenges at larger companies. At smaller companies, you will build a lot more features. You will build applications. You will try to figure out what users love, right? So generally, as they say that if you want to make career as a product manager later, working in a very young startup as a software engineer might be a great stepping stone for that, right?
Correct.
So these might be some pointers about what are the differences.
So next up, I will ask you some questions about particularly, what are the things that people learn at different size companies. One interesting question, although that has come, is scaler a startup? So what's your opinion on that?
No. We are very much a startup. And as I said, these are two basic variables. Just timeline is one thing. So for example, Jeff Bezos often says that Amazon is a startup. And actually it does. He's not, kind of bullshitting. Because at Amazon today, the culture is that all the smaller teams will function very independently. There might be a team of 5, 10, 15 people. They can take a lot of decisions. And they are expected to run at the pace of a startup, which often sometimes results in, someone who, let's say, want a lot of personal time, like as often people say that, in startups that might be relatively harder because people say that there is work and there's my personal life. Often at very, very young, early stage, it becomes one, that my work is my life, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Of course, if you enjoy that, that is totally, totally okay. But yeah, Scalar Academy absolutely is totally a startup. We continue to work in the same, high pace, quick iterations, and a lot of independence to people to, freedom to do whatever people want to do for what they are building.
Right.
Of course, in larger organizations, some of these features get lost. In a large organization, probably before you can do anything, you will need a lot of approvals, a lot of people need to be updated about it, etc. Generally, at a startup, you have an idea, you can just go execute it.
Makes sense. So, I'll just start off with a question, and this is just starting off with, let's say, this is the positive side of the things, and then we will move on to more comparisons and trade-offs in terms of working. But now coming to, individual level, like if I go and work at a place, then what I get, what I learn, and from that perspective, if we are going to a very early stage company, like where you are among the first 10 employees, maybe where somebody has raised only, seed funding, angel funding, product market fit, they have not figured out. So what are the positives out there for engineering? What are the things that we learn? What are some of the challenges that we get, which can be great for us?
Yeah, so in my experience, actually, I worked for a very large, almost government-like organization during my internship. Then I worked for a very young startup where there were, I was the second engineer to join the team. And then, of course, then I started my own startup. One thing that I see is that while working in a very young startup, you very easily get an opportunity to kind of see the full life cycle of product development, all the way from, say, talking to your potential users, that what do they want, right? Then being closely involved with what feature, what tools, what should we be building, which our potential users would like, or, they will be very happy with, right? Then implementing it, and then generally your job doesn't end there. After rolling it out, you see that, how was the adoption? Are people really using it? If they are using it, are they happy with it? Are they coming back to use it? Or there's a lot of churn? And then the next cycle that, how can we further improve on it? So one fact is, I don't think I have never come across any founder or anyone who has built some very famous application who said that I suddenly had an idea, I built it, I rolled it out, and it went crazy, it went popular. Never happens. You build, you get feedback from the user, you figure out that what are the things that can be better, how can we make it more engaging, and then you keep iterating. So in a very young startup, you will have an opportunity, even if you are joining, even let's say as a junior engineer or as an intern, even then you have the opportunity to see this entire life cycle. Now compare with, let's say, a very large MNC, right? Now, it is very hard to see the entire life cycle because there will be not just people, there will be full departments dedicated to take care of each part, right? And depending on which department you are joining, it is very hard to, kind of get very deeply involved with other departments. So that I see as one of the biggest, like for people who want to grow very, very fast. Like one beauty of tech ecosystem is that your growth is actually not defined by how many years of experience you have. Like recently I had seen this on Twitter, someone tweeted that in Bangalore, things are so crazy that someone with 5 years of experience got an offer of, salary in, 1 CR or so. So which actually it's not crazy, but it is a beautiful thing because in tech, it is only and only not at all about, how many years of experience you have. And that is, how tech operates, right? So, like again, prime examples are, let's say, people like Zuckerberg or Larry Page, etc. They were very, very young when they built massive companies, right? And there were a lot of people in their early team who were also very, very young, and they were building one of the most valuable company of the world, right? So at startup, you get an opportunity to grow at that pace. No one will tell you that no, you don't really have a lot of experience, so you are not supposed to give inputs to say product, or you are not supposed to figure out what users want. Some senior people will do it. In a startup, you will get an opportunity to do everything. However, I know that this part was only about the positive, but I will also give a caution of advice that it doesn't mean that every single startup will give you that. What you need to see is that is it a startup which is being built by a strong team, capable people, and who is actually going to grow that fast. Like of course there might be plenty of people wanting to run a startup. If they're not the people from who you can learn, then it might also lead to a very bad experience where you are clueless, there's no guidance available, there's no structure in place, and then you are just wasting your time, right? So again, as I said, that it's not that just joining any startup is right or just joining any big MNC is right. This is your background, your aspirations, your mode of working, and also evaluating at the company level is important. There are exceptionally good startups which might be better than the largest, biggest companies in the world, but at the same time, there might be very bad ones as well.
How to sort of figure out how to get an idea? Right. Do you have any mental modeling, any framework to apply to this? How to find out which startup might be stable?
Right. No, so there is actually, a very solid model. There are some 3-4 different parameters, at least in my opinion, in their order of priority. And of course, you all can also change this is your individual thought process. But for me, the most important thing are, first the people. That what is the current team, right? Are they people you feel are capable, committed, and hardworking? Are they the people who you think you can learn from, right? If you don't feel that, then that is, generally that is a red flag for me at the very beginning. If it is not a team that you can, look up to, that you feel, see, we are all average of 5 people that we spend time with. And wherever we work, we are going to spend the maximum amount of time with those people, right? So if you feel they are much better than you, there are areas, and of course, the area doesn't mean necessarily tech. You might be good at tech, and these people at the young startup you are joining, they might be really great at something else. They might be great at product, they might be great at user experience, they might be great at, let's say, sales, marketing, anything at all. But it is very important for you to have this confidence that the team of this young startup is very solid. You should always evaluate on that. The second one is that what are they working on? While I didn't keep that at first, it might be surprising for many that at startup mein, the idea is the most important thing, but you are saying that is the second priority. So see, of course, idea is important. Like more than the idea, what problem is the company solving? Do you think it's an important problem? It's something which really matters, right? If this problem is solved, a lot of people will benefit from it. Are you able to build that belief, right? Because why I say that exactly what product, what feature is being built, particularly if it's a very early stage startup, if it's a very solid, problem statement that they are trying to solve, and it is a team with high execution capability, sooner or later they will be able to figure out. Their current solution might not be the best, but they will be able to, kind of figure that out, right? But if you feel that the domain itself is not making sense. So for example, again, it is important for your long-term commitment to the company as well. Let's say crypto might be very hot field, right? And there is a team, a very capable team, which is, working in the domain of crypto. Now, if you deep down feel that, yes, I believe that crypto is going to revolutionize how things work, then it absolutely makes sense to join them. On the other hand, let's say despite all your conversations with them, you asking them, tell me about the product, you are not able to build this conviction. You don't feel that crypto, you strongly feel that crypto is just a hype and it doesn't really have value. Then probably it wouldn't make sense for you to join that company, because if your heart is not there, what's the point of being there, right?
Right.
So that would be my second parameter, that the domain is that exciting for you along with the team. Third would be, I guess, of course, that I would never advise that someone should just like, there is an opportunity cost. So see, as an engineer, as a developer, or as any contributor, there's an opportunity cost associated with your time as well, right? If you were to join this company, you will not be doing something else that you would do otherwise, right? So what is the opportunity cost, right? And opportunity cost and reward should kind of have a balance. So let's say if there is a company which says that, why don't you join our company? It's a great product, it's a great team, but you should take 80% pay cut and there is no ESOP for you either. Again, doesn't make sense, right? So there should be some, opportunity cost, relatable or, kind of rationalized opportunity cost, associated with your rewards as well.
Yeah. Next, I would like to, sort of progress on that same direction we were asking. So I was asking about very early stage startups. But if we go to, when we talk about startup versus MNC, sometimes in that discussion, people forget that this sweet spot of like, there are great number of companies doing great work where, the team is maybe 150 kind of tech team.
Yeah.
And they're also working with millions of users, probably hundreds of millions, but millions of users definitely. And they're doing some super innovation, and they also have the money to give you good salaries. I mean, this is also a pretty sweet spot. And so I have seen a lot of my friends who have gained a lot in life.
Right. So, we were talking about mid-sized or let's say larger startups, right? So of course, the startups can also be categorized as, say, a very early stage startup, say a team of, say, 10 or less engineers. Then there could be, as in this question you mentioned, 50 to 100 team, many millions of dollars in funding. Of course, these companies generally would never have a issue in paying good competitive salaries. Often they end up paying even more than the larger MNCs because, like they have to attract talent. Like we all might have heard the recent BMW bike thing, right? So what are the, like, how is it, what kind of learning can be expected there? There are two, like in my experience, because, I, like, for example, during my work at Fab, and even, let's say, often we talk about Anshuman's experience working at Facebook, we both joined the companies when they were very, very small. And then we worked through them when they became, and I think, Arnav, your journey was also similar. When you joined Zomato, it was not that big.
Yeah,
and then it grew to be growth, much bigger, right?
During this stage, the company also grows very fast.
Correct. So and generally what happens now that when a company is growing a lot, the people who are involved in making sure that the company grows also grow at the same speed, right?
Yes.
Like, for example, actually, as they say that a company will only grow if people in the company grow and vice versa. That if a company is growing very fast, then the people there are bound to grow that fast, right? So that is, one very big advantage of being a part of any such team is that you can crunch your experience of 10 years into 2 years. Let's say, working in a company which has already grown a lot. Now, of course, after that, they are going to grow at a certain pace, right? They might, let's say, still have 10, 20% growth every year, but they will not be doubling down every year or might not be becoming 3 times, 4 times bigger than the previous year, right? What that leads to is that in that short period of time, so for example, a team of, say, 20 engineers, they might not have any processes. They might not have, let's say, proper code reviews process in place. They might not have CI/CD implementation. They might not have, let's say, security implementations, etc. Right? Now, if you are at that time when the company need to make sure that all those things are in place, then you get an opportunity to learn in depth that how each of these systems are implemented, how these choices are made, etc. Versus, let's say, you join a company where all these things are already in place. Then you will be only a user of everything which is set up. right? Now, let's say a particular continuous integration or continuous deployment process is set up. Now you will not have an opportunity to understand that which platform, which framework is best for that, what are the events, flow, etc. should be designed. Then, at joining a company at that pace. So, for example, if you join a really big company where all these things are already in place, then you can only use them. You will not know that what was the rationale behind setting up this process, or like what choices were made while setting up these processes, right? So, it is actually an exceptional great opportunity to join a company which is in this exponential growth phase. Too early, to be very honest, the risk is much higher. There is not going to be no process, and there's a risk that maybe just for a 6 month, 1 year, you try building out different things and things do not work out. Fine, that happens. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But joining a growth stage company, particularly as an engineer, might give you an accelerated career growth. So often you will see, actually, I will maybe not take the name of the companies in this example, but one of the 5 biggest companies, I had 2 friends of mine from the college days. One person joined this largest company right out of college, and he still works today, actually, there itself, right? After 10 years, for 10 years he has been working there. Another friend of mine joined a very young startup, worked there for 2 years. After that, he joined a very high growth startup, worked there for 2 years. And after that, he joined the same company, one of these 5 biggest companies. Now, the second friend of mine, he joined the first, he joined at a position which was 2 levels ahead of my first friend. The reason is, because in this 4-5 years of his journey, he was exposed to so many responsibilities, things, systems. This friend who started in the large organization itself never had an opportunity to learn, right? So working at a mid-stage growth companies gives you an opportunity to grow much faster. You can, if of course, if you are, taking initiatives, if you are showing leadership, you are taking up, larger things, then it gives you an opportunity to grow much faster.
Correct. Completely agree. I also felt like my time I spent at Zomato was kind of like a career accelerator for me. Because the next company I went to was a big MNC, and there at my age generally people never join at team lead positions. But I got that because I was leading a team at Zomato, so automatically that sort of happened.
Same with me and Anshuman as well, that our time at Facebook and Fab, we were able to, when we started out our company, so we had a lot of things that we had done in those companies, and we knew that, we can just reapply that experience, that knowledge, and build out things much faster. Otherwise, generally someone at 4 or 5 years of experience, it's very rare to have all those experiences.
Right. I keep, telling my mentees also, like, if you get these kind of roles where, if somebody gets a SD2, SD3 kind of role at this Series B, C kind of funded startup, which has millions of users already, like, go for that. There can't be anything better for the next 1 or 2 years of your life. You might end up staying there also for 5 years, but regardless, even the 1 or 2 years if you spend there, that's going to be very, very valuable. So next, I think, obviously, moving on to a lot of people who also want to sort of know that companies which are already established, the big MNCs who have offices across the world, and the tech teams itself can be in thousands, some 10,000 maybe also, right? And obviously there are benefits there because a lot of people want to work there, a lot of people are working there, and they tell about the benefits. So definitely there are benefits of working at the behemoths as well. But the different, obviously, the advantages are very different in nature. There are different things you gain working at a big company. So if you can shed some light on that, what kind of things that you gain in this case, if you go for a big company.
Right. So, of course, working at the large companies have their own benefits as well. One, however, which is often is the most common cited, which is the job stability. Actually, it is not a benefit. Now, this might sound funny that, how are you saying that my stability of job at a large organization is not a benefit? Because, see, the job stability is never with a company. The job stability is always with your skills, right? So let's say even if you work at a very large organization, but if you do not really possess the best of the skills, or let's say after joining, if you stop, learning, or if you stop really contributing to important things, sooner or later, see, no corporate company is a, socialistic company. If you're not contributing, you will not sustain anywhere, be it any company, right? And if you don't have skills, it will be almost close to impossible for you to find job again, right? On the other hand, if you are best in your skills, if you are in, let's say, top 1%, 5% in your skills, then even if you join a very young startup, let's say without any funding, and let's say things do not work out 6 months, a year down the line, company has to shut down. Like, I have never seen a very skilled engineer having to not being able to find jobs within few days once they start looking for jobs. So your job stability, your security actually lies with your skills, not with the companies you are working for. In 2008-9 recession, for example, I remember when we joined college in 2006, Lehman Brothers was a company which was the most, looked after company. Everyone, it was a dream job for anyone looking for investment banking or, financial jobs.
And say Goldman Sachs is today.
Probably what Goldman Sachs is today. Lehman Brothers was, like many of you might not, those who are younger ones might not even have heard name of this company now, Lehman Brothers, right? Lehman Brothers got shut down in 2008, 2009, right? Everyone lost their jobs. Some of my friends who had offers from Lehman Brothers, like the company doesn't exist suddenly, right? So, as I mentioned, that do not think that a large company will give more job stability versus not. However, another benefit which does exist, which is generally, in a larger company, generally there will be more processes already set. So in a startup, what would happen? Let's say, for example, Arnav, when you would have joined Scalar, it would have been that, fine, you have your laptop, check out the code, start coding, right? That's all. And this might be, in a young organization, probably there will not be a lot of processes that you might have to just do a lot of things on your own. Right. When you join a large company, a large MNC, then of course, because they have existed for so many years, there will be a very precise process set for everything. There is a very clear step what to do in this stage next, right? Often a pattern is again not a global thing, but if you are someone for who job is just a mean of earning, and then you have your actual passion or your hobbies outside of what you do at job, right? In that case, generally at larger companies, probably it's more of that, even if you just spend 7-8 hours at work and you deliver what you are asked to, that will be more than enough, right? So if you think that, for example, as an engineer, as a techie, if you are someone who thinks that, I write code just to earn, and I want to have as much free time as much possible outside of my job to, enjoy my life. Then again,
and there's nothing wrong in that as well.
Exactly. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Yes. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's totally okay to say that, writing code is not my passion. It's not my hobby, but I'm a software engineer. I'm good at it. I do it for a living. That's totally okay. And if that is you, then probably also working for a large company might work out better, because again, there are 10,000 engineers in that company. Nothing is dependent on you. If you are off work after 5 p.m., the company is not shutting down because you are not available after 5 p.m. Right?
Right.
However, in a smaller company, of course, this luxury doesn't exist. So generally smaller, and of course, again, there are pros and cons of this as well, right? In a younger organization where you might be single-handedly responsible for something important of the company, then, probably this 10 to 5 thing doesn't exist. If something, let's say, if you build a service which, let's say, processes the payments of the company, let's say you are working for an e-commerce company, and if that service is down, you will have to take care of it. Otherwise the business is going down, right? Because you are the only one who built it, you are the only one who is managing that, right? So this is actually one good benefit of, a large company as well. Now, some more of signaling based benefits as well. That, the company brand thing that people talk about, although, it also works positively and negatively both. I may narrate this funny incident. Again, I will not take name. So one of the founder of, one of largest $5 billion company. Now, I was speaking to, a year back. He advised that, the philosophy I follow, that I try to avoid hiring anyone who has always only worked in large companies. And I said, why are you saying so? He said, see, like in a startup, there is more, one has to be scrappy. There is more hustle. Things will not be defined. You just have to figure your way out. And someone who has always worked in a very, structured environment, they generally are never not able to survive. Right.
Right.
So like this, I may kind of relate with, let's say, the people in the decorative army of Queen Victoria, they will not fit into, let's say, a guerrilla, warfare battalion, right? They cannot survive there because they are only used to being decorative and just doing the kind of well organized parade. They cannot really survive in a jungle warfare situation, right? While startups are more like jungle warfare, it's fun, but of course it's different,
Right.
So yeah, I think these are some of the I see as some positives of working for a large company as well. Anything that you would want to add, Arnav?
So I think one positive that can happen is this finding mentors and networking can sometimes happen,
Absolutely,
and especially if it's huge, very huge, like the Googles and the Amazons.
Right.
There, what happens is like their internal social media also has 100,000 people.
Correct.
So
for example, yeah, very good point. Actually, I know at least about Google that their internal, they have a very great internal mentoring system in place, right? And of course, there is a high volume of high quality talent, good community of highly talented people that exist inside these companies. So the access to, a large network of very talented people that you get at large organizations is something which is very good. At a smaller company, of course, it's a smaller team. So while it is possible that you might still find a great mentor at a startup as well, but it is much easier to find them in a large company.
Right. So going on to, I think, sort of now, contrasting the things together, if I put, if someone moves from a large organization to a smaller one, what are the trade-offs that happen, and what kind of mentality switch that they need to do? There are some new pros that will come up, some new cons will also come up accordingly. And I think taking that same thing that you were saying, right? Sometimes some founders might even think of avoiding big company people because they might not be able to adapt or something like that. But if somebody is making that kind of a switch, what should they do?
Right. No, first thing is, of course, while the founder I was mentioning is a very, great person, but in general, I generally, avoid generalizations because, it's not true that, anyone who has worked at a big company cannot do great at a young startup, right? Some might be able to fit in, some might not be able to fit in. That being said, one very important mindset shift, and actually, see, skill wise, anyone at a large organization who is doing great, they will be great skill wise, hard skill wise, right? They definitely are great programmers. So skills generally, I have never seen skills being a challenge. That to work at a startup, you have to, learn some different kind of skills. It's 99% it is about the mindset shift that is needed, right? Now, in a large organization, it is very natural that anything that you want to do, execute, it is natural to expect that the entire structure around it, frameworks for it, etc., need to be in place. And if something is not working, let's say, for example, that you wrote your code, you build out a feature, and then it is supposed to be deployed. Now, let's say there is some issue in the deployment system or deployment script, because of which, let's say, some issue happened on production, right? Now, in a large organization, obvious expectation is that there is a team, there is a DevOps team. It is their job to make sure that it keeps working correctly. And, if I have built my code, I don't care, they should fix it. Right? However, this mindset generally never works in a startup environment. In a startup environment, it is possible that there is no DevOps team at all, right? Or let's say, even if there's a DevOps team, the mindset that is expected. So let's say I, as an engineer, I can actually narrate an example from my experience. So this was back in 2013 or so, 12 or 13. Someone kind of built out a feature and it was supposed to be deployed. After it getting deployed, it was deployed on test environment, the staging environment first. It worked fine. And then it was deployed on the production. After getting deployed on production, there were issues. Many services started going down. Features were not working properly on the platform. And then when they started digging out, they got to realize that there is nothing wrong with the code that got deployed, but there was some issue in the deployment process, right? Now this person, he had recently joined from, again, I will not take the name, but one of the 5 largest companies in the world, 5 largest tech companies in the world. And this person said, yeah, the DevOps people will look into it. What do? I will go home, right? Right. Now, and while I remember the CTO of the company back then, we were sitting out that, if it is issue in the deployment, let's get it fixed as quickly as possible. DevOps people are still looking into it, but let's sit with them, get it fixed, right? So in a startup, generally these boundaries do not exist. On the other hand, in a larger organization, actually other way around might happen. That let's say if the development team goes and tells the DevOps folks that tell me what went wrong, I will help you fix it. They might take it offensively. That dude, this is our job. Let us do it. Why are you meddling into our thing? We will fix it.
Yeah.
Right? So this is something that happens at the large organization. This mindset shift of contained ownership versus end-to-end ownership. In a startup, a mindset of end-to-end ownership is very, very important. I think that is one of the biggest switch that is generally needed. That you have to figure out the solution. You have to make sure that things are working. Another important point that I can also make is that in a startup, irrespective of what your role is, you always have to keep an eye on the end result. That what end result is it driving? While in a large company, it is okay as long as you wrote code which doesn't have any bug, you will be fine, right? Because that's all you were asked to do. And you can just keep doing that for many years and you will keep growing well, right? But in a startup, you also have to ask that, if I'm writing this code, what feature is it exactly building? Is that feature even useful? Do user want it? If you feel that this feature shouldn't be built, it doesn't have any meaning, no one would want to use it. So you cannot say, yaar, mere ko to product manager ne bola tha, to maine bana diya. You are supposed to be asking that is it really useful? Should we be even making it? Right? Or is there something more important that we should be instead making? Right? In a large organization, you are probably not expected to, have these inputs. But in a startup, again, if you want to grow faster, if you want to have more ownership, then you will have to think have a full picture in view. You cannot just, have a narrow view that I was asked to do this, so I did this.
Right. Okay. So what we just discussed, I think the other way around is something, I just few years back did the same thing, went from a smaller company to a larger one. Yeah. And exactly what you were saying, I think I went to an opposite journey. And while at, I think, Zomato, I used to sort of push back against product managers a lot that, why are we doing this in the product? Is this going to be good for the product? Like, I am not the product manager, I'm the engineering lead. And yet I used to have a lot of inputs in the product. And sometimes, some backend API update needs to be done for a new feature on the app. And if a backend engineer is not yet aligned, I have contributed a bunch of commits in the backend repository as well. So it was a huge, massive PHP repository. It was very hard to read the code for me. Somebody who has not worked on, PHP backends a lot. But I did that because, it has to be pushed. So, we just go ahead and, I have made commits and then went to the CTO and like, sir, PR hai, usko zara ek baar review karke merge kar dena. Like that.
Right.
When I went to, a bigger MNC, then, my manager used to keep telling me, don't do those things that you do at Tata, here somebody might get offended. Like you might be thinking you are being helpful, but they might think that we will do it on Monday. Why on Friday evening you have to send pull request to web team?
Correct. These are different environments, and something which might be right in one might be wrong in other one, right? So the comparison is as I said, a decorative army battalion versus a guerrilla warfare army. What might be the right thing to do for a guerrilla warfare might be very inappropriate for a decorative army. And what might be the right thing to do for a decorative army might be, just useless for a guerrilla warfare army.
Correct. Actually, expanding on that question a little bit, I would also say that, in what circumstances might one want to move from a smaller organization to a bigger one? At what stage in life do you think that can be actually a helpful thing to do?
Yeah. So, generally, like, again, my opinion, of course, there might be multiple more reasons as well. Would want to emphasize that the reasons that I am listing out are not, limited reasons. Some of the transitions which are high value are if you have spent enough time, building out products in a small team, and if you are able to join a larger company for a new initiative, a new project in a leadership role, you will suddenly find an opportunity to play the same game, but at a much larger scale with lot more ammunition on your side, right? As an example, let's say that if you have worked with a bunch of startups building B2C mobile applications, etc., you understand how to build quickly, how to iterate quickly, how to build high quality products. Now, let's say Google was launching, Google Pay in India, right? And if you are able to join in a good position in that team, now you will have an opportunity to kind of build an app which will be used by billions of people suddenly, right? You will not so for example, let's say if Google launches Google Pay, within a month or 2 or 3, probably it will already have hundreds of millions of users, right? Now this will not happen with any startup. A startup might eventually get there, but it is going to take much longer time, right? Also, the kind of resources that you can find in a large setup, in a large organization, candidly, is insane, right? So you will have, even kind of, you can play around with data clusters, server clusters of thousands of servers. You can play with all of that. You will have access to a lot better tools, better, larger team of very, capable people. So if you find an opportunity where you can lead into some new teams, then definitely it makes sense that you have accumulated skills. For example, Arnav, when you moved from Zomato to Target, right? Yeah. It was kind of a similar transition that, you have kind of accumulated all the skills, and then you can, you might also be able to kind of maybe give some input.
So I think I felt like I wanted to understand that, I think engineering learning wise, I feel there are 3 stages of learning. At least I felt. Maybe there are even more stages than you can say. I think one is that when you get your hard skills in place, like, how can I build a great Android app? How can I, you put me in a room of 10 other Android engineers and I can build the best Android app out of them. Right. So that's, I think I felt like, that's one stage. And then the phase that I was at Zomato, I think I felt like, that's where it was a mid-stage startup, growing very, very fast, growing from, 30, 40 cities to 500 cities. So how can I make an Android app work best with millions of users? How can it deal with so many types of devices? So the scale of users, how can my product sort of adapt to that? I think that was sort of learning. So there, I think the user base of the product is growing, and that is the scaling that's happening. And then I think there is another scaling which happens is that now instead of 10 people working on the app, there are 200 people working on the app. Right. So how do you architect the code base so that it can map to that organizational structure as well? Because there might be 3 teams in different countries, different time zones. So it's not like, you want to do a code review. You can pull up a chair and sit beside the next person and say that, acha chalo dekhte hain, pair programming kar lete. Sometimes you have to document your code in such a way that maybe 6 hours later when you are sleeping, some other person is reviewing your code. In that cycle also it can work. So I think to me it felt like, okay, scaling the product, I figured that, okay, I have sort of conquered some part of it. But how do you work in a big organization? How do you work when, the organization structure itself is 10,000 engineers?
Correct.
What are the challenges there? So that was a phase of learning I had never had. And I got that when I worked at a big MNC in that sense. I have seen a lot of people go from big companies to small to big. And different people have different opinions. But also, what do you think, personal opinion? That should people start their career in small organizations, then look at bigger organizations later, or do the other way around, start it in a bigger organization, come to smaller? What can be the advantages of either way of going about in the career?
Right. Yeah, so again, it's very hard to say that big versus small. However, one thing that I can say is that when you are very early in your career, you definitely want to be at a place where you can learn a lot from others, right? Often there is this, Dunning curve that exists that, that time, sometimes we feel that we know a lot, but in reality we don't, right? And unless you get into, so one bad thing that happens, I will tell about what should not happen with anyone, is that you know something, but because you have never seen the big world of tech, you feel that you know a lot, and you join a place, you end up working at a company where there also you know more than everyone else. So you will always remain stuck at that false belief of knowing a lot while you don't really know a lot, right?
Correct.
So I have seen, that bad journey happening to some of the people, where then once they get stuck at that place, even after 3, 4, 5, 7 years of experience, they will remain stuck there. That they don't know much, but they are stuck in believing that I know a lot, right? So in your first career, you should optimize for going for a place where after going you feel like stupid. You feel that, I don't know anything. right?
Right.
Now that can be achieved at a big organization or that can be achieved at a small organization. The worst
Right.
thing that can happen to you is that as your first job, you enter a company and in the first 3 months, you continuously are feeling that I am exceptionally talented and I am telling everyone else what to do.
Right.
If that is happening with you, know that you are at a wrong place. Generally, most of the people who have in the long term have been able to do exceptional things in their career. 99% of them will have a story that how in the first 3 to 6 months of their career, they were that, yeah, dude, I got to realize that I don't know anything. There's so much to learn. And, like I'm having to burn the extra midnight oil to actually cope up with that. That can happen at a small company as well. That can happen in a large organization as well. And either of it might not exist at either place, right? So as I said that it's much more important in the earlier career to be surrounded by the people who can tell you, who from not just tell you, but you can get to know that what are the missing pieces in your learning, in your knowledge, and who can also guide you on that path, right?
Right.
Because the more you learn in the 3 steps of learning, Arnav, that you talked about, the first step, generally in my experience, what I have seen is that the first step happens early in the career, right?
Yes.
Of course, that doesn't mean that it ever gets too late. It doesn't mean that if it has not happened, it can never happen. But, the sooner you can do it, the more you can grow, right? You will have more time to kind of apply them. Once you have, let's say, 7-8 years of experience, then you can also consider that fine, I can go join a company as a CTO or as a senior engineering manager or a senior architect. And I am okay even if the others will not be able to help me learn it, but I have already accumulated enough hard skills to just help the company build this stuff. But doing that too early in the career generally doesn't lead to good results. So look for, that learning opportunities. And generally, generally that is, again, it's not an absolute thing, but the probability of finding, great learning opportunities will be lesser if it is a very, very small company. Let's say if it's a company with just 2, 3, 5 engineers, then most likely, it is harder to kind of get a lot of learning. And there is more risk that you might become the god there, right?
Right.
And that is a bad state. That's a bad state. You being a god when you are just out of college is not a good state for you, because then you will remain stuck there, right? You will not grow. So yeah, just avoid being the smartest person in the room, particularly in the early stage. Once you have 8-10 years of experience, you have seen the world, you know that what you really are, then fine. For some time you can be the smartest person in the room, but not too early in the career.
Right. And I think if sometimes like it can happen to people who might be engineering lead or a CTO in a early stage startup, then if you are the smartest person in the room, then parallelly also be another room where you are not the smartest person.
Correct.
Find some mentors, find some seniors, talk to them, those things you have to do. Because I felt like me, Varun, we used to do the same thing. We were coding blocks. I think, building the tech team. We were building that team. So I think we were the senior most people. So obviously that feeling can sometimes happen. And that feeling, once you realize that you cannot grow if you are the smartest person, then you should immediately look for places, go open source communities, contribute to some complex project. That time you get to meet some people. I think that kept, I think, my head firmly on my shoulder. So I was contributing to open source projects, and there were some, big 30 years experience people. And that always kept me humble that, okay, my small company I'm running, their tech I'm running, I am the smartest person there, but then there are very big people building very big stuff. So always things to, sort of learn from them. That's definitely there.
Absolutely. No, open source community is a great way to kind of, network and learn from exceptional people across the world. So yeah, definitely.
Right. So one thing is about working in startups, there has been a question. Some people in startups seem to be still figuring out process, delivery quality, changes. So he's asking whether it's a good thing or whether it's a bad thing that people are still figuring these things out.
Right. No, generally what I have seen is that if the company is growing, then it is a very good thing, because then you get an opportunity to figure out solution for setting up the right processes, right? Which will be in the long term, which will be very useful for you for the senior leadership positions, right? As I mentioned, that either you can be a cog in the wheel or you can be the one who designs the entire automobile, right? And if you are in this stage where, the startup is setting up the processes, defining how things should be done, then you have an opportunity to design the entire automobile. Versus, let's say, if you just go sit out in a well-built car or a train, then you just sit in it. You enjoy it. It's moving very nicely, but you do not know how this was built, how it was designed, what were the reasons to kind of take every decision. Right? So generally, it's a good thing if the company is growing. Of course, there could be a downside as well. That let's say the company is never able to figure out the right processes or the right opportunities, and they crash in some time and they do not even exist. So, like if you see that happening, then then probably it's not a good thing.
Right. I mean, it needs to be a learning opportunity rather than something being always broken. But if people are learning that thing, you can always treat that as a learning opportunity. So that's definitely it. One old question that was there, I think it was not exactly about this particular topic, but it's an interesting question. So I just thought I will pick it up definitely at the end. So Jagdish had asked that he has 12 years in a service-based company as a QA. He has been working, and he's asking, will it be a wise idea to switch to product development in FANG companies? And I think this is a very common question that you and Anshuman face a lot with a lot of your mentees. So shedding some light on this.
Right. No, so it absolutely is a good idea. It kind of opens up a very big set of new opportunities of growth, getting a chance to work with very highly capable people in the field. So no doubt it's a great idea. However, that being said, that the transition is it's not a switch. It's no magic bullet or a silver bullet or a magic pill that this transition will happen just like that. Generally, what I have seen, that you will need a long-term roadmap to build your skills, build projects, do some development before you can actually make this transition, right? Which is easily going to be a roadmap of 9 months to 2 years with consistency and consistent hard work, right? But that being said, that while this might sound a lot, here I will have to work hard for 2 years, then this will happen. But another thing is that the kind of this is an orbit shifting change in career. It's not an incremental change. It's not like that, I'll do this and I'll get another job with say 20%, 30%, 50% hike. This transition is an orbit shifting transition, right? So, even if with hard work of 1 or 2 years, if someone is able to achieve that, that is totally worth it, right? But again, as I said, that it will take good amount of hard work to do this transition. And why I say this is orbit shifting, parameters being that, as I said, that an entirely different environment of working, culture of working, exceptionally high impact of your work, compensation, etc. are also, to be very candid, are uncomparable. Like if I compare with a typical service-based company with the kind of salaries, a large FANG kind of organization or a large good startup might be paying, often they are, like 5x, 10x salary. So, it's totally worth doing, totally the right direction to work in. But one should know that it will take a substantial amount of hard work to make this transition.
Correct. So, one last question I will take up. So, I think Soumya had asked this, and again, I think going down into a little bit of specifics, similar question we had answered. So, sweet spot for high growth startup, should we focus exactly on this fact that, post angel funding before Series B, or there are other factors, what do you think about it?
No, so first thing is that, investment is not at all a criteria to join or not join a company, right? So for example, there is a company called Zerodha, right? Zerodha is probably one of the best startups in India. They have never raised any funding. They never even raised, angel funding or any seed funding, right? But it is probably one of the best startups to work for in India. Most, like great tech team, great culture, like no reason why you shouldn't. On the other hand, there might also be companies which might have raised a lot of funding, but might have very bad culture, might really not have exciting tech work, and might even implode and shut down. Funding is in no way measure of success. Not at all. Like maybe how I actually look at funding is, it's similar to how much it's similar to loan, right? You have taken money from somewhere. While it is not exactly like loan, but essentially it's like how much, like I have taken money from somewhere to build a business. That doesn't like, of course, I have name calling. I don't really like name calling, but let's say Vijay Mallya. He took a lot of loan. Like, does that mean that his company suddenly became the best company to work for? Absolutely not. Right? So do not look at funding, as I mentioned, that you should look at, like the team, which domain they are working in. Is it a domain that you think is, interesting to work in, and there's a lot of good impact that can be created in the domain? Do you think, and again, the stage of the startup, in the sense that are they right now just stealth mode, just trying to build the product? They have not even launched it. Is it pre-launch? Or is it that the product has been launched and it is growing very fast? Or is it in a stage where it has grown quite a bit and now they are trying to... So all the stages are good. Generally, if you are more of a tinkerer who loves doing experiment, building things out, then the early stage is more suitable for you. If you are a more, if you want to see scale, etc., then the growth phase is good. And if you kind of want, large company like environment, then probably, the stage probably that Zomato probably have hit now is good for you, right? But funding is not at all a criteria. You shouldn't be looking at funding to decide whether to join the company or not.
You're not having to do significant sacrifice on cash component. I think you can look at those kind of parameters, right?
Right.
You are getting good bit of ESOPs, but you're also not having to sacrifice maybe 50% of your market rate. You're sacrificing only 20% of market rate, maybe less than that. And there are good, tech leads or VP engineering kind of, good people are there in the team who can help you learn. I think those things can be a good criteria, I would feel. We had a great discussion, and I think a lot of good questions came up. Some more have also come in. I think you people can definitely, add some of these questions to the comments. So whenever there are, we definitely write down answers to comments wherever there are on our videos. We will do that. Thank you so much, everybody, for turning up. If you would like to, be part of, community, discuss about projects, discuss about topics like this as well, then come up to our Discord community, and of course, please, like and share this video, subscribe to our channel. So, thank you, Abhimanyu. I think great topic, and we sort of covered it from a lot of angles. I think I will end with only this note that neither big company nor small company are bad decisions. You have to figure out what stage in life you are, what you want out of the next few years, and based on that, take your pick. So that would be it.